Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Easy XP, your one-stop shop for gaming news, discussion and other general gaming goodness. As always, I am your host Den, and welcome to the show for another week. We've got another packed show in store, a lot of news for you today. The more observant listeners among you might have heard that I'm sounding a little bit strange. Don't worry, it's just a cold. I've taken enough Codral to chill out a fairly moderately sized elephant, so I will try and make it through this show as best as possible. And this week we have a very packed schedule, a lot of stuff happening again in the lead up to E3. It's going to be another big week of news, and I'll probably run over again, but well. So with that in mind, let's get straight on to the news. We were very Nintendo heavy last week, so this week we're going to clean out the Microsoft desk drawer. But before that, we have something to discuss. Australian game devs get government funding cut in recent budget. Look, I just want to preface this by saying, yes, in the grand scheme of things, this is probably one of the least substantial things to come out of the recent budget. And no, the games industry shouldn't get more attention than medical and education concerns. But you know what? This isn't an education show. This isn't a politics show. So let's talk about some goddamn video games. In the recent Australian federal budget, the Interactive Media Fund was cut, essentially removing $10 million from the local Australian game industry. Game industry figures have had mixed reactions, some assuring that this won't have a long-term effect, many complaining the decision was made without the consent or counsel of the game industry, and others noting the short-sightedness of the cut, and how the $10 million short-term investment would pay dividends very quickly in the growing $70 billion worldwide gaming industry. Some devs are also expressing concern at the future of the Australian industry, with many developers being supported and even started based on government funding, and taking this as a sign that the government is not willing to help expand the Australian game market. Needless to say, video games are kind of my thing. This is my show, after all. I like talking about video games, and traditionally, Australia has never had a very big video game market. We had a little bit of a nice spike a few years ago where we had two, essentially AAA developers, Team Bondi, who was responsible for many great games like LA Noire and also the Australian branch of 2K Games. But of course, those have both been shut down, unfortunately, and so we're basically left with a lot of smaller, essentially indie developers. And like I said, the games industry is a $70 billion industry. It is a shame that such a thing got cut, and I hope that in the future, when some other financial woes have been sorted out, the government returns to supporting the Australian game industry, because it has the great potential to produce not only some great profits for the entire industry, because essentially everything is export, so it's bringing money in from overseas, but also mainly because, well, gaming is a new form of media. It's an emergent cultural force, and it's steadily growing, and it's here to stay, so it's quite silly that the government doesn't see any value in that. But obviously we should probably put in a few things before an industry that might go on without this funding cut, but it's just another thing to think about from the recent political turmoil. Up next, Kinectless Xbox One to be sold starting June 9th. Microsoft have recently announced that they will be releasing an Xbox One SKU that does not include a Kinect for those who want it. A post on the official Xbox site revealed how the new bundle would work. Kinect-driven services like Titanfall and Netflix will not be affected in any way. The new unit will ship for $399.99 with no indication of how that will translate to the Australian market, but in US dollars it is now the exact same price as its competitor, the PlayStation 4. Supposedly, making the Kinect an optional peripheral allows Microsoft to divert more processing power that was set aside for the Kinect to be used in its games. Microsoft also stated that there won't be any early adopter rewards for people who bought the system before the cut, like Nintendo did when they cut the price of their 3DS system. A standalone Kinect will also be available for purchase eventually. In addition to this cut, Microsoft will be adjusting their Xbox Live model to include certain features to be used without having to pay for the service. These include services such as YouTube and Twitch uploading and Netflix. Microsoft is providing refunds to those who recently bought gold subscriptions to use these features. Alright, I'll add the Kinect to the list of things that couldn't possibly be removed from the Xbox One that have since been removed from the Xbox One. All joking aside though, I think it's probably the smartest thing to do. I mean, lots of people weren't buying the Xbox One for the Kinect after all, and making it comparable with the PlayStation 4 in price is certainly going to help. I mean, if I ever shill out for an Xbox One, I'd be happier knowing that I could save $100 that I probably wasn't going to use anyway. But it's interesting thinking about the entire life cycle of the Xbox One up to this point. When they first announced it and all the features it was going to have, they insisted that there was a ton of stuff that they couldn't remove, It was essential to the system, including always-on DRM, including the Kinect as a function, and now all of those are being slowly stripped out into the console that they probably should have just announced to begin with, and a console that's quite similar to the Xbox 360. Although, unshackling a couple of services from the Xbox Live subscription model is definitely a good thing that I can fully get behind. Because, I mean, the Xbox Live subscription model is a little bit... Well, compared to the others, it's not one of the best services you're going to be getting. I suppose the online for the Xbox systems, both of them, has been quite good. But having to pay simply to play online in general is a little bit of a raw deal, especially considering that with the PlayStation Network, if you pay for their subscription service, you also get a couple of free games thrown in, which, from what I've heard, Microsoft are also starting to do slowly. So yeah, I don't know how this price cut's going to affect the Xbox One. I certainly think it's going to convince quite a few more people to take the plunge, I suppose, into the Xbox One and try it out. So yeah, I think it's a good thing overall. As a consumer, there's never a bad side to getting the same product for less. And so, yeah, we'll be interested to see how that goes, whether the sales figures take a jump following come June 9th. Okay, here's our next one. According to Microsoft, people are more satisfied with the Xbox 360 than the PlayStation 3. Oh boy, I don't know why I included this one. Maybe because I burst out laughing when I first read this statement. Oh well, here we go. In a discussion with Forbes magazine, Microsoft Marketing and Strategy Officer Yusuf Medhi explained that the reason that the Xbox One wasn't selling as well as their competitor was because Xbox 360 users are more satisfied with their consoles, and so they feel less of a need to upgrade. People have been more satisfied with the Xbox One than the PS3, Medhi says. So in that respect, people have had a less of a need to upgrade in the short term, due to regular updates for the Xbox 360. Medhi also explained that worldwide availability of the PlayStation 4 makes the sales comparison an unfair one, as Xbox One isn't as available in as many parts of the world. Alright. Ladies and gentlemen, just this once, I'm going to offer you a quick introduction into thinking before you make statements, because reading between the lines makes the thing you just said really horrible. 1001. Think about what he's just said. He has essentially said that there is no compelling reason to upgrade to Xbox One. If you think about that statement for even a little bit, it is glaringly obvious that what he just said is that people who owned 360s don't want to upgrade because they cannot tell the tangible benefits of owning an Xbox One over a 360. It boggles my mind that somebody came out and actually said something like that without thinking of what the subtext behind it all was. Oh dear, I mean, some people could argue that there isn't enough of an incentive to upgrade to the Xbox One, but that's a discussion for the other time. This is a Microsoft official saying this. Dear Lord, people, think before you talk. Okay, moving on to something slightly different and not Microsoft related. Watch Dogs' performance on consoles announced. Ubisoft has confirmed that the console versions of Watch Dogs will run at sub-1080p resolution and at 30 FPS. The PlayStation 4 version will run at 900p 30 FPS, while the Xbox One version will run at 792p 30 frames per second, because apparently 792p is a thing now. Resolution is a number, just like frame rate is a number. All those numbers are valid aspects of making games, said creative director Jonathan Moran. It is much more important to deliver an amazing next-gen experience than it is to push a few more pixels onto the screen. Okay, here we go. This is something that I know has been causing a lot of a stir recently, and for good reason. When Watch Dogs was first announced, they said that it was flagshipped as going to be the first and great next-generation experience, and they said that they were going... And they said that they were going to make it 1080p 60 frames per second. And it's a shame that they're falling short of that. And what he's essentially saying is that they want to try and push making a next generation experience rather than simply pushing out a good-looking game. And I am all for that. As you heard me say last week, I would much prefer games that do things we haven't seen before rather than games that just look pretty. And that's essentially what he's saying. He says that they've had to sacrifice some of the visual fidelity to make the world feel more alive, make it a lot more interactable, make the game world feel a lot better, essentially. And I am all for that as a concept. However, you have to find the fine line between dropping graphical fidelity before it starts impacting your game experience. Because if it starts impacting your game experience, you shouldn't drop it any further. And I have a feeling that for this, they possibly have gone too far. For the PlayStation 4 version, 900p, okay, I can live with that. I would much prefer it to be 1080p. Obviously, I think that as the next generation, 1080p should be a necessity. It should be the lowest possible benchmark. But, okay, on a television from a few meters away, 900p to 1080p, it's not the biggest sacrifice you're going to make. The Xbox One's a bit of a bigger drop, which is a little bit unfortunate. The thing that really concerns me is still having it only run at 30 frames per second. It would be significantly better to have it running at 60. The gameplay experience would just be all the better for 60 frames per second. I would prefer if they actually started stripping a few, maybe even anti-aliasing or lighting effects out just to try and hit that solid 60 frames. Because 60 frames per second should be the new benchmark for this new generation. I'm sorry, it really should. I know some people say they can't tell the difference, but having a steady 60 frames per second frame rate is just going to benefit the game in so many ways, and it's silly that a game that's meant to be the flagship of the next generation, the first true next generation game, is only running at the same resolutions and frame rates that the previous generation consoles were running at. It's just... look, part of me thinks that there's not much Ubisoft could have done about this. I have a feeling that when they released the latest trailer, people had a very big knee-jerk reaction to the fact that the game wasn't looking as pretty as it was when they first announced it at E3 back in 2012, I think was when they first announced it. Yeah, and so they had to try and push up their graphical fidelity a little bit at the sacrifice of resolution and frame rate. And I get that. And I'm sure it's not too indicative of the consoles as themselves. I have a feeling that if given slightly more time, they probably could have optimized them up to 1080p, 60 frames per second, if they had the time, but they've delayed the game already, and so delaying it a second time really isn't an option, especially for the time it would take to get it running at 1080p 60. But, well. In the end, I'm getting it on the PC, so I really have no concerns on either matter. Okay, I think that's enough news for one day, considering we've taken up a good 2/3 of our show with nothing but news. So I'm going to take you into our first track of the week. Now, last week I shared with you a lovely track from Sonic 3, and I enjoyed it so much I had to go looking for more from Sonic 3. Sonic is obviously one of those iconic gaming characters and have some iconic gaming tunes associated with it. So when I found this one, I thought you'd enjoy it. It's something a little bit upbeat to enjoy for the first track of the day. And so for our first track, I leave you with What We Left Behind from Sonic 3 by Aviators. are listening to Easy XP on SURG FM. My name is Den, your presenter as always, and that was What We Left Behind by Aviators. It's almost a bit Avengers-y in that opening section, isn't it? It's a very nice track for your Monday morning. A nice little techno beat to get you started in the morning. Okay, so I suppose we move on to our next section, which is what's been happening to me in the world of gaming. Well, actually, I've had quite a few assignments this week, so my gaming experience has been a little bit lackluster, to say the least. Obviously, I always have a few fallbacks that I end a day with or use to take a break, and so to that I've been playing some more Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. It's becoming a much better Phoenix Wright game as time goes on. So at the beginning, I would have voiced my concerns about how I felt it was more a Professor Layton game. It's becoming a much better Phoenix Wright game throughout the course of it. I'm about 8-9 hours into that now, and it still feels like the mystery is only just getting started. So I'm sure I've got a lot more to go with that one. Also, I've been playing a lot of modded Minecraft. I don't even want to even guess how many hours I probably would have put into Minecraft between playing through the vanilla version since early alpha, I suppose. I've now moved into checking out the modding community for Minecraft, and me and my friends have a server that we play on occasionally, and modded Minecraft is ridiculous, seeing what people can do within the confines of the Minecraft game engine, and some of the stuff they add is just crazy, like entire systems of magic and technology systems and automation and stuff that allows you to just mine out huge swathes of land in a single go, and it's a really, really interesting experience. And for anybody who has Minecraft, I do recommend checking out the modding scene. And if you feel that it's a bit too hard to try and figure out what to do, I highly recommend the Feed the Beast mod pack and launcher. You can't go wrong with modded Minecraft by going through them. And also, if you're interested in seeing some of the great stuff it can do, there's a YouTube user named Direwolf20 who does daily videos on modded Minecraft with many of the mod developers, actually, and that's something that certainly inspired me. What else? Oh yes, I started playing Kerbal Space Program. I did, and I love it. I simply adore it. It just oozes charm from every pore of its being, and there's just something immensely satisfying about the way the physics engine and the rocketry works. There's nothing quite as satisfying as throttling up your engine and watching your predicted orbit slowly growing, and then watching your spacecraft fly elegantly through the air towards some distant planet. It's obviously not for the weak of hearts. It's very challenging to do much, but the mechanics and the controls are simple and elegant, and it runs butter smooth, and there's this sort of like loopy Pixar-esque soundtrack that accompanies the entire thing, and it's just amazing. I've really been enjoying my time with Kerbal Space Program. What else? More Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and it's more Donkey Kong. It's more incredibly, incredibly good, incredibly challenging Donkey Kong. And I suppose I haven't been playing it, but I just wanted to point out, what is with the advertising for Wolfenstein recently? I mean, Wolfenstein is traditionally an R-rated first-person shooter series, but there's just been posters for it everywhere. I just see it around and in the most weird places, and it's so weird that Wolfenstein of all games is getting such exposure, considering that it's an R18 plus rated game. And yes, for those who haven't been keeping track, we do actually have an R18 plus rating in Australia, thank goodness. And yeah, so that's been around. Oh, and also I should point out that there have been two game announcements that I've found quite interesting. Far Cry 4 has been announced to be released late this year, which seems a bit short considering that Far Cry only released in 2012, and Blood Dragon, which is fantastic, both of those games. And Blood Dragon was also only released very recently. On top of that Far Cry 4 should be coming out so soon. It's set in the Himalayas. I've had good experiences with the Far Cry series. It's something that I never would have expected to enjoy personally, because it's a sort of an open world first person shooter, and first person action orientated shooters really sort of aren't my thing, but the amount of time I've sunk into both Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3, I've really enjoyed them, surprisingly so. And so I'll probably pick up that game when it comes out eventually. And also one thing that's possibly not my thing, but I'm sure a lot of people, for a lot of people it will be, a new Halo was announced, Halo 5, which when I heard that, I personally would have found the news that the sun rose in the morning slightly more surprising than the fact that there's a new Halo game. But no, Halo 5 has been announced. It's an Xbox One exclusive, obviously. And so that's going to bring a few sales in. Obviously, that's for a 2015 release. It's personally not something I'm going to be interested in, and I don't think it's going to be the killer app that sells me on the Xbox One. But that's just me personally. I'm sure it'll be a great game. I'll be interested to see how they treat it on the Xbox One, really show off what the Xbox One can do with that game, because Halo's normally been known for being one of the better looking games on Microsoft systems, being a first party system, being a first party game, in fact. And so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And also there's rumors, and rumors with a capital R, that Microsoft are going to be releasing Halos 1 through 4 for the Xbox One, remastered, which, for me, sort of Xbox One, Halo 1 through 3, I suppose, release in HD, but Halo 4 doesn't really need to. It's kind of a sort of bad trend, I think. It's just, as a Nintendo fan, I really have no right to be talking about being annoyed that they're releasing the same thing in better looking graphics. But still, I think that with games, some of those games are really, really new, and I'm not entirely sure whether they warrant a new release. It's certainly interesting, but I suppose that'll be a big seller for the Xbox One, if that does come true. Obviously, it's still a very, very big rumor. And, I suppose it'll be nice to have all the Halo games collected into one package, updated for the Xbox One. I'm sure that'll interest a lot of people in the new system. And who knows, if I ever get round to actually acquiring one of them, I might look at that. I mean, Halo's never traditionally been my thing, but who knows? Having them all in one space for one price might be something that sells it to me in the long run. And so I think that's enough of what I've been playing this week. We are running quite rapidly over time, so we're going to have to be brief, and so we're going into our next song. And knowing me, a week would not be complete without a Zelda or a Mario track, and so I have this track for you. This track is known as Requiem for a Damaged Spirit by, and I swear this is possibly one of the best names I've heard, by Chimpzilla. No, even better, Chimpazilla, who created this track, Requiem for a Damaged Spirit, from Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, based on the Spirit's Requiem track, which is only about 5 notes long, so I was very interested to see how they managed to twist this one. And so, Requiem for a Damaged Spirit. Enjoy. You are listening to Easy XP on SURG FM. My name is Den, I am your host as always, and we are moving into the final part of our show now, our discussion topic of the week. It is moving on to 10:35, and so we're running a bit over time, but the lovely ladies at Jam have given me permission to run a little bit overtime, so I'm sorry to any of their listeners who have just tuned in. You're going to have to listen to my flu-riddled voice for the next 15 minutes talk about stuff you probably don't understand. So, moving finally on into our discussion topic for the week. With the recent notification of the Xbox One receiving a price cut, I thought it would possibly be a better time than any to talk about the whole pre-order culture and the dangers of early adoption in general. Now, obviously, as we saw, the Xbox One just got a price cut without a Kinect included, and they haven't offered any form of ambassador program like Nintendo offered with the 3DS, and so people who paid $100 extra for a Kinect they didn't necessarily want are left high and dry, and essentially being punished for buying the system early, essentially being punished for being loyal customers to the brand. And it is a bit unfortunate, but I have a feeling that this is as much a consumer thing as it is a company responsibility thing. If you are, especially with video game consoles and games are unique in the sense that there is very little advantage to getting them right away, but there is massive drive to get them right away. And we now have a massive culture surrounding pre-ordering games, essentially paying for games before they're released. And some companies have essentially used this to help finance the game. It's been beneficial in a lot of circumstances. Lots of games like Minecraft, for instance, Kerbal Space Program as well, have benefited from people pre-ordering the game, buying into the alpha in order to help finance the game. And that's really good. But unfortunately, when it comes down to pre-order culture, when it comes down to AAA games, the kind of games that are going to be selling millions upon millions of copies anyway, chances are the pre-order, just take a minute before you pre-order. Because lots of people have gotten stung before by pre-ordering games. I think one of the most famous instances is a game known as Aliens Colonial Marines. What they promised was completely different to what they delivered, and lots of people, especially fans of the Aliens franchises, pre-ordered this game, and when it was released, it was awful, it was dreadful, it was buggy, it was broken, it was unfinished. And even because of that, people got burnt. They'd already bought the products. They'd pre-ordered it. They'd already bought it before reviews came out telling them that it was bad, before saving their money and breath and time on a game like this. Because they pre-ordered it, they got stuck with this awful, broken mess. And we shouldn't let companies get away with stuff like that. I think the most recent figure that I heard is for Grand Theft Auto 5. Grand Theft Auto 5 was one of the most expensive games in history, or if not that, it would certainly be up there. It was a very expensive game to make. It was a very, very big game. But it's paid back its entire development and marketing cost before the game was released due to people pre-ordering it. And this was before people knew what the game was like. That all they had seen were trailers and screenshots from what the company was showing them. It's a very, very unfortunate thing, and some developers have been a bit exploitative in the way they utilize pre-orders, and there's a certain mentality. I don't think it's quite this apocalyptic or nasty, but there's certainly an element of that in there, where you make the game look as good as possible before it's released, and then cash in as many pre-orders and sales as possible before reviews get out that reveal how sort of kind of not good the game is. And so obviously, there's only one way that we as consumers can make a difference in this, and that's to stop pre-ordering games. I think it's quite as simple as that. In the age of digital distribution, I don't think there's an excuse for pre-ordering games unless you're buying a physical copy. If you're buying a physical copy with the extent of, yep, you know you want it, you're pretty sure that it's going to be good, and you want to pre-order your physical copy so that you can get it on the day it's released, your physical copy, so it won't run out of stock in your local stores, then cool. That's a good reason to pre-order. But in the age of digital distribution, if you're going to get the game digitally, then don't pre-order. Why would you pre-order it? Just wait for lots of reviews for the game telling you whether or not it's a good idea to buy it are released before the game comes out. In an age of digital distribution, if you're getting these games on Steam or on the digital variants for the consoles, and there really is no reason to be pre-ordering it. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, Far Cry 4 has just been announced. We didn't know that game existed until a few days ago, and Ubisoft are already accepting pre-orders for it. It's absolutely ludicrous, and it's something that we should really try to avoid at all possible costs. I think there's something a little bit different with consoles. Obviously, if you're buying a console on launch day, there's going to be some drawbacks to that. Getting the product early, there aren't a huge amount of compelling reasons of doing it other than supporting the company, or if there's a launch day exclusive that you are really interested in. Yeah, I can't exactly talk on that because I have owned every Nintendo system, well, in my lifetime from launch. So we've got, I don't know about our N64, but I know we have a launch day GameCube, a launch day Wii, a launch day Wii U. Our family has owned a launch day DS. I own a launch day 3DS, although that's getting a little bit, it's not exactly breaking, but it's getting a little bit tired. It's a little bit of an old system. I might have to upgrade that at some points. And fortunately, because it's Nintendo, I haven't been burnt with that yet. I know that it's Nintendo. I'm going to be getting good games eventually, and so I don't have any misgivings about getting those games on the launch day, because most likely those consoles are going to last me until the last day of their generation. But I haven't been burnt yet. That's not to say I won't. It's probably not a very sustainable practice, and naturally, as I've been growing up a bit and knowing a bit more about the consoles and knowing a bit more about how the hype train works, in the future, I will be much more critical in thinking about, is this something I need to own at launch? And obviously that's something that consumers should be doing as well, because when it comes to the consoles especially, there aren't that many compelling reasons to own it at launch. If you wait for quite a significant amount of time, if you wait for even a year, chances are you're going to get it for cheaper. You're going to have a better game library. It'll be used quite a bit more. So when it comes to console, it's a little bit of an ambiguous topic about whether you should buy it at launch. And I suppose it really comes down to, are you confident enough in it to know that you're going to get your value out of it if you buy it early? Is there something you want that is there something you want that you don't want to have to wait for within the game's launch? Because if there isn't, and you're not entirely interested in necessarily showing support for the company, then it's possibly best to wait. And obviously when it comes to pre-ordering games, just be critical. Be critical, be smart consumers about pre-ordering games, because pre-ordering games can promote a very unhealthy attitude within the games industry. And so it's not something we necessarily want to be supporting. And so I think I have rambled on for far too long. My throat is complaining violently for me having used it for long enough. And so I think I will end it here. I am going to leave you with our track of the week. Now, this week, because we've had a very heavy Microsoft themed episode, I thought I would share with you for my track of the week something from Halo. I obviously am not a massive Halo fan. I haven't played many of the games. I haven't been that intrigued by them. But there are some who would argue that the opening theme to Halo, the opening choral theme, is as significant a gaming symbol and identifies with gaming as much as a Mario theme or as much as a Zelda or Sonic theme. And I would agree, it's very pertinent, very important theme in the history of games. And so when I found this track, it was very strange because Halo wasn't my thing and metal really isn't my thing. So when I heard this one, I was a little bit confused about how much I enjoyed it. It's quite a very heavy piece to end off with, based on Halo 3. It's known as In Memoriam by Brandon Strader, and I will be leaving you with that in a minute. Of course, if you would like to contact us, you can contact us at surgexp@gmail.com. That's surgexp@gmail.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel, which is user/surgeasyxp or user/surgeasyxp, or just search EasyXP in your YouTube search. You will find us eventually. And so now I leave you with the metal throes of In Memoriam by Brandon Schaefer. Thank you very much for listening to our show today, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy.